Dark Souls 3 is familiar in a way that a Souls game hasn't been before. Yet it's a comforting familiarity, as if the game knows exactly what it is and what fans expect. Although it doesn't seem as revelatory as the original Dark Souls or as markedly different as Bloodborne, it nonetheless occupies a positive space. There's a reassuring confidence with Dark Souls 3, like it's not trying to carve out new territory, but perfect something that's already captivating. Bandai Namco recently gave us the opportunity to go hands-on with an updated version of what was shown behind closed doors at E3. However, we were still restricted from recording our session, leaving us with only trailers to illustrate what we've seen. Players could choose one of two classes, a knight wielding a longsword or a wanderer with a hefty one-handed axe. We chose the wanderer and plunged in, immediately noticing the warrior of sunlight emblem to the left of our health, likely indicating that our character was bound to a covenant. The symbol is most commonly associated with Solaire, an iconic character of the original Dark Souls. Unfortunately, it has no implications in the demo, so we're not sure what extent covenants will or will not play. The demo begins on a balcony of an ash-covered castle. A pale sun casts light over undead worshippers praying beside the corpse of a dragon. Down a small set of stairs, past a bonfire, an undead soldier lay in wait. They say you never forget how to ride a bike, and the same is true of Dark Souls. Without thinking, muscle memory kicked in, and we blocked the soldier's lunging attack, then immediately circled behind it for a backstab. Interestingly, the backstab feels very much like the original Dark Souls. It happens quickly, and you're completely invulnerable during the animation. Not long after conquering the first foe, we encountered another undead, but this one carries a lantern that, when rattled, seems to stir previously passive characters to life, causing them to attack. It reminds us of the Chime Maiden in Bloodborne, an enemy that needs to be killed quickly lest you suffer the consequences. The demo contains other small, similar surprises as well. Several times while exploring, multiple undead soldiers clambered up the balcony for an ambush. They're not especially loud, so it's very easy to get caught completely unaware. The zombie dogs are back, although they get knocked away when struck, which actually makes them significantly more difficult to kill. Dark Souls 3, like Bloodborne, seems comfortable with throwing quite a few enemies at the player. When you're surrounded in the heat of battle, a dog you've knocked away likely has a chance to get back up and continue its assault, as urgency shifts your attention to other monstrosities swinging all sorts of horrible weaponry at you. Much like the dogs, the demo is filled with recognizable elements that have a twist or two. Mid-tier knights make a return, but they're more formidable than before, and don't let you backstab as easily. On occasion, they would use their shields to try and knock us out of position without even turning around. Since many Souls enemies only use forward-facing attacks, it definitely caught us off guard. What caught us even more off guard was a praying undead that violently transforms into a massive black goo. Looking like something that crawled out of the abyss, the creature moves with incredible speed and hits harder than almost anything else we encountered. We hoped to see more transformations, but it was the only one that occurred during the demo. Everything is sped up from previous Souls games, to the point where combat feels like a blend of Bloodborne and Souls. Of course, the same is true of enemies as well. Standard enemies are faster and more aggressive than in prior games. Unlike Bloodborne though, a constant assault rarely works, since there's still enough time for enemies to counterattack between animations. Make no mistake, this is still very much a Dark Souls game, where players are rewarded for adopting a defensive strategy, looking for opportune moments to strike. Another significant change is that we can only parry with a buckler that doesn't completely mitigate physical damage when blocking, unlike our bigger wooden shield. The same is true of the knight's heater shield. All of the weapons found could be cycled through by pressing right on the D-pad, and they immediately went into the same quick select slot. The Estus flask used to heal functions much differently. In past games, there's a fairly slow drinking animation that leaves you wide open to attack. While the animation isn't instantaneous here, it is significantly faster. That being said, we didn't see life gems or any other healing items during the demo, so perhaps that's the compromise From Software is making. Fewer options, so you're more reliant on Estus. There's also no penalty for death, at least as far as we could tell during the brief demo. In Demon Souls, you lose half your health upon death, and in Dark Souls 2, you lose a small chunk of life every time you die. Here, we respawn with our entire bar intact. What does refill upon death, but not after resting at a bonfire, are charges for weapon arts, one of the most interesting and enjoyable aspects of the demo. In addition to the normal light, heavy, and lunging attacks of each weapon, there's also a unique move called a weapon art that consumes one charge upon use. Unlike most other video games, weapons aren't just a collection of stats in the Soul series, and as such, you may be more likely to pick something that simply feels good over its raw power. The result creates a strange, intimate bond. Your identity as a character is largely wrapped up in what you choose to bring to battle, and weapon arts strengthen that identity. The weapon art for the battle axe, when activated, puts a strange red aura around your swinging arm. For a brief period of time, attacks do roughly twice as much damage. There's something satisfying on a primal level when you activate the art and hack through an enemy like a barbarian. Since you have so little time to take advantage of the state, you really have to study enemies and discover the best time to use it. Relatively quickly in the demo, we found the Greatsword and twin scimitars. The Greatsword has the most gleefully fun weapon art. You slam the pommel of the sword into the enemy and then swing upward, launching them into the air. Flinging an undead knight over a ledge is indeed as great as it sounds. Yet the power comes at a steep cost, since the move drains the entirety of your stamina. Interestingly, the twin scimitars are treated as one weapon instead of two separate blades. You can easily switch between a lone scimitar and shield, or wield both weapons at once. The weapon art for the scimitar is a circular spin, good for clearing a swarm of weaker enemies. Due to limited time, we sadly didn't get a chance to use the longsword at all. Weapon arts never felt essential, and it's very possible to play through the entire demo without trying them at all. It doesn't seem like From Software is interested in gimmicky enemies that force weapon arts upon you. Instead, it's another wrinkle in an already fascinating and complex system. Working through the demo offers a strong sense of what the level design may be like. The ruined castle contains plenty of tucked-away paths that are very easy to miss. The best secret comes from a locked door. We didn't find the key until much later, but eventually returned and unlocked a path to what was easily the demo's fiercest enemy, an icy, armored beast with glowing white eyes. Despite its size, the beast moves with sudden bursts of speed, performing lunging attacks that reach across the room. It also inflicts a new status effect called Frostbite, but unfortunately, we weren't able to discern its exact effect. Curiously, the beast doesn't guard an item or weapon, only a gravestone with an epitaph about a soul finding its way back to the Frigid Valley. Another epitaph in the beginning of the demo is about a nameless retainer who raised his sword for the Lord of Cinder. Apparently, the Frigid Valley is a very important place in Dark Souls 3. The boss of the demo is named Dancer of the Frigid Valley, and it's a perfectly apt title. The spindly figure moves like liquid, simultaneously graceful and grotesque, embodying the soul's aesthetic in the truest sense. It wields a giant flaming sword and attacks with slow, wide arcs. These attacks are easy to avoid but deal massive damage when they connect. At around 50% health, the boss transitions to its second phase, splitting the sword in two, spinning wildly and attacking much more quickly. The fight is pure spectacle. As the flames of the sword kiss the tattered rug on the ground, it erupts into flames. Even though we defeated the boss on the first try, it was a harrowing battle, consuming every last Estus charge, firebomb, and charcoal pine resin we had. It's a dramatic conclusion to an impressive demo. Despite the innumerable comparisons to past games, Dark Souls 3 nonetheless leaves an indelible mark. In many ways, it feels like this third chapter is taking many of the best aspects from Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Bloodborne, while sprinkling in enough new mechanics to keep things interesting for longtime players. So far, it seems like a grand refinement instead of a huge leap forward, but that's probably a smart move. From Software has identified the strengths it's learned over the past 6 years while cutting out everything that doesn't work. They've proven once again that they're not only still full of ideas, but more importantly, still able to instill wonder and dread with every step.